Hi, I'm Angela Anderson. I was an editor at Cell for 3.5 years. Currently, I'm a scientific writer at the Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation and co-founder of Life Science Editors. Today, I'm going to give you an inside perspective of the editorial process. I think we have all felt like this scientist in the cartoon, approaching the finish line after years of hard work, only to face these characters, the editors and reviewers. I want to give you a better sense of what editors and reviewers are looking for. I hope this information will help you understand editorial decisions and disarm critics so you can get your research published. So, what happens to your manuscript once you've clicked Submit? In my experience, the editorial team would read the title, abstract, and cover letter and briefly discuss whether the manuscript seems like a strong candidate. Many scientists overlook the cover letter, but this is an important opportunity to speak directly to the editors. Think of it as a letter of recommendation for your work. Tell the editors the big picture question, what you found, and why the readership of their journal should be interested. After the editorial team discusses your work, it will be assigned to a handling editor. The editor will read your manuscript and put it in the context of the literature and decide whether or not to send it out for review. The editor determines the state of the field by searching PubMed and by reading through your introduction and discussion. They want to know, are the findings novel? Are they unexpected? Why are they important? To some extent, the editor will evaluate whether the data can support the conclusions. What approaches are used? Are the experiments designed well? Are the findings unambiguous and compelling? As an author, you can make the editors and the reviewers' jobs easier with good writing. You want to convince people to publish your work. Your manuscript should be easy to read, the logic should be easy to follow, and the data easy to interpret. From my experience, submitted manuscripts created this kind of curve. A few were obvious strong candidates, but most were borderline. There's a lot of really good science out there, but you can make your work stand out with good writing. Good writing can push your manuscript to the right on this curve and increase your chances of getting published. You can ensure that your manuscript is written well by soliciting feedback from your colleagues, writers at your institution, or a freelance science editor. The initial evaluation takes about 2 to 3 days. If the paper is not reviewed, the editorial letter should explain why the manuscript was not considered a strong candidate. At this stage, you can prepare the manuscript for another journal, or you can rebut the decision. If you decide to rebut, you will need to convince the editor that they missed an important point and explain why this point is critical. If the manuscript is sent out for review, then 2 to 4 referees are invited to provide in-depth reviews. One of the editor's most important jobs is choosing reviewers. Most journals have a database of vetted reviewers. You might get a sense of whose opinion the journal trusts by looking at the editorial board and authors in previous issues. Editors will also consider recommendations in the cover letter and scientists they've met at meetings. They will also look through PubMed and through your references to identify potential reviewers. The editor will honor a reasonable number of exclusions and would likely not choose your colleague, competitor, former mentor, or other scientists that might have a biased opinion. Reviewers are selected to cover different aspects of the work, from the topic to the organism to the approach. These reviewers may not be in your specific field, but one that is related. Also, it can take time to secure 3 reviewers. Sometimes editors have to ask more than 10 people before enough agree, depending on the time of year. Over a week has passed since you submitted your manuscript, and hopefully now it's in the hands of reviewers. If the editor is lucky, the reviews will start coming in 3 weeks later. Usually with 3 reviews in hand, the editor weighs these opinions and makes a decision. In my experience, and probably yours, the opinions are often mixed. For instance, reviewer 1 loves it, reviewer 2 is lukewarm, and reviewer 3 hates it. Editors don't use a simple algorithm to make their decision. It's not a democratic vote. Also, editors and authors interpret the reviews differently. What might seem like a glowing review to an author might be considered only weakly supportive by the editor. The editor also considers the identity of the reviewer. Was the reviewer selected for conceptual or technical expertise? What is the reviewer's perspective? Even with all of this information, these decisions can be very difficult. When this happens, the editor may discuss your manuscript further with the reviewers or with other editors. Several factors influence the editorial decision. For high-impact, broad-interest journals, conceptual concerns are key. Do most of the reviewers find the discovery a substantial breakthrough in our understanding of biology or disease? Technical concerns are also crucial. Does the experimental design address the questions that are being asked? Are the appropriate analyses used? Were proper controls included? In this sense, technical and conceptual concerns are related. The data must support the conclusions. The editor will also weigh the manuscript from the publishing perspective. Is this a field or trend that the journal does not want to miss? Where does the work fit within the standards set by recently published or rejected manuscripts? These are points you can consider as an author when you're deciding where to submit your work. Once the editor has considered the reviews and made a decision, he or she writes the decision letter. Read this letter, and not just the reviews, carefully, since the editor may raise points that are of particular interest or concern for the journal. Most letters tend to be in the blue zone on this arrow because the strength of a revision depends on the results of future experiments. As an author, if you have questions or concerns, you can always email the editor or request a conversation. Communicating with the editor might help you gauge their interest and understand the issues. Since the decision is very rarely a straightforward yes or no, decision-making and letter writing can take a week. So if everything goes fairly smoothly, you could receive the reviews and decision about 5 weeks after you submitted the manuscript. So to summarize, the editorial process is nonlinear and iterative. Although some aspects are out of your control, you can control the quality of the data and the writing. I've compiled a list of tips to increase your chances of publishing success. As I mentioned before, the editors read the title, cover letter, and abstract first. Take the time to make your point crystal clear in each of these elements. Try to minimize discussing your previous paper that this journal published, or a recently published paper that is similar to yours, or the good feedback that you got at a conference. Focus instead on building a strong argument supporting the importance of your current submission and why it should be sent out for review. You also need to make a strong impression on editors and reviewers with the manuscript. Each section of your manuscript has a goal, as I've indicated here. I've underlined what I found to be frequent pitfalls. The introduction should provide a good rationale for your question. Explain what led you to this question. It is not enough to say that something is unknown. Why is it important to know? The findings should be organized logically in the results, which is not necessarily in the order that they were discovered. Also, describe the data accurately. If the data don't match the description, then the reader might begin to question your skill or credibility. Along these lines, the data should be as clean and unambiguous as possible. The strength of the conclusions is directly proportional to the quality of the data. Finally, put your findings in the context of the literature in the discussion. Remember, the community is reviewing your manuscript. Give credit, acknowledge contradictions, and draw in the reader. The best way to determine if you've written a good manuscript is by soliciting feedback. I hope you have found this information helpful. Please feel free to email me with any questions. Thank you for listening, and good luck with your future submissions. I also wanted to thank Rebecca Bourne, Miles Smith, David Lum, and Helen Pickersgill for their input on this presentation.